welcome to Taking It to the Streets. I'm your host, Andy Goldman from sunny St. Pete, Florida. This is the show where we take it to the streets, knowing if we don't, the streets will take it to us.
Welcome to Taking It to the Streets. It's Andy Goldman. One more week. It is NFL week number 2. Before we begin with, of course, Mike McLaughlin, this show is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, www.wrightwoodmedical.com, WRIGHTWOOD medical.com. They're your leader in used and refurbished medical equipment, 773-848-7100, and on we go. Mike, as I said to you offline, we could talk for hours about what we saw, what we didn't see. There was drama. I thought it was superb. I'm one of those guys. It doesn't take a lot for me to give the NFL a good grade. I'm a sucker for it every single way you want to scoop it out to me. I'm the same way with the PGA Tour. But between the Bears game last night, between the Baltimore game the night before, between all of these sub-stories of death pool and fantasy that will rip through this NFL, whether we like it or not, every week, it was awesome. So let's just cut to what I think is on a lot of people's minds is the Bears game. Was it a breakdown? Was it a team? There's a lot of different ways that I want to pick your brain on this. Do you look at it as a breakdown by Chicago, getting outplayed like that in the second half? Or do you commend Minnesota? You know, there's the old cliche that these guys are just in it for the money. And we saw last night that they're not in it for the money. Okay, the money's part of it, and it's a good part of it. But there's also a heart that exists inside these guys that got them to multi-million-dollar contracts. And it was a pleasure to see it last night in Chicago because that Minnesota team really got after it. Where do you fall on it? I just don't think it was such a breakdown by the Bears as much as it was unbelievable by Minnesota.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I think the Minnesota players have said in the offseason that this is year 3 under Flores, and they're now like in graduate school for defense and understanding his defense. And it's funny, I mean, that guy can't get a job in the NFL because he's got a lawsuit pending against them based on what Miami did a few years back. But I mean, you talk about a guy that deserves a second chance, it's probably Brian Flores before anyone else. I mean, I think that Minnesota's defense is, going to be one of the better defenses all year just because of the way they coordinate. You don't know where he's coming from. Ben Johnson has the experience of having played them and kind of dominating them when he was with the Lions. But it's a different story when you got Caleb back there and a younger team who hasn't quite figured out his offense yet. I mean, and with that article that came out from Tyler Dunn on Caleb Williams was, if it's to believed or if any portion of it is to believed, it's pretty damning, and it's more damning on polls than anyone. I mean, the fact that, he's trying to hide things from the team and, maybe he doesn't have the best work ethic. 32 sources were anonymously on the record, but some of that kind of came to light late in the game, I thought, where he was calling motions off. And, at some point, he's going to get the system and they're going to figure out whether Ben Johnson is tied to he and Poles, or if Ben Johnson's going to be leading the ship. I mean, I was kind of surprised they kept Poles in the offseason personally, just because, he brought in Eberflus, and that was a disaster, I thought.
How close are they in Chicago to what I feel the road is clearly heading towards, which is a quarterback struggle between Bagent and Williams? Because I am of the belief, you can laugh, Mike, I am of the belief for Shepherd University, there is no difference between him and Purdy and Brady and whoever else were Mr. Insignificance at that time. And that place, I'm going. How long do you stick? And the Bears have also, for a guy like you that is a lawyer, they've set a precedent with the way they handled Fields. So how close are we to Bajent being part of the dialogue in Chicago and letting him go out there? That kid, I mean, to me, is the best backup in the game, and he's a live backup agent. So when does he get his shot?
I'm shocked to hear that the backup quarterback's the most popular player in a city.
Yeah.
But he's getting the full year. You have to. I mean, you can't.
As Fields did. And Fields did.
Yeah, and to be frank, Chicago is playing in one of the better divisions in football that just got improved, and by in Green Bay. Minnesota is going to always be problematic. Detroit maybe is taking a step back, but it's still, I mean, Chicago in a different division may look better than they do. It's just you happen to be in one of the better divisions.
Like everybody can say that, though. They could say that in Tennessee.
I'd take the AFC South. I'd take a spot in the AFC South over the NFC North any day of the week, personally.
I'm just saying, you can do that if we weren't in this,
No, I mean, they are where they are. But I'm just saying it's what you need to see from Williams is growth. And you need to see him operating within Ben Johnson's system, not freelancing. And he's had some bad habits at USC, had bad habits at Oklahoma. And, he's been told he has, got Patrick Mahomes-like skill. He's not shown that at the NFL level, and very few people do because there are very few Patrick Mahomes.
What were the things you learned? Okay, so Mike has produced a narrative for friends, family, and anybody that would read it for years and years and years, and it's incredible. I want to give a little preamble on it. So it's just basically, for years, Mike would send me the 14 things I've learned this week. So just imagine that, folks. Every single week, he's basically putting out a narrative about what he learned in that current week. So we're going to pick his brain. You take it from there, Mike. What'd you learn this week?
Well, not everything. It's fit for publishing. So I will just stick to the relevant.
Start with your nephew. Start with your now. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, he's starting right tackle at USF, and they went into the Swamp as 17.5-point underdogs and pushed them around.
Unbelievable.
It was an unbelievable game. And I know, NFL stadiums are allowed. Going into a college stadium, he said he could not hear a thing. He said, and he played at Stanford for 4 years and he did not get that experience. So let's say the Pac-12 and the SEC, it is different, and it was awesome to see them knock the Gators off. And it did hurt my national championship bet, but I'm happy for it. I'd pay for that every day. So,
and in your heart, did you know these guys were a live dog? I mean, I knew it when Grammatica just barely missed that 54-yarder. I knew they were going to get that next possession. The defense seemed like they were right, and and the second question would be, who makes the schedule for a team like USF to open up with Boise, a 5:30 p.m. kickoff in Tampa, then put them on the road at the Swamp, and then send them to Miami? I truly hope they're getting paid for these games.
Yeah, the Gators paid $500,000 for the pleasure of losing at home.
Love it. What's Miami paying them?
I don't know that, but they're also 16.5-point underdogs that are getting slept on again. So, I mean, you got to play the schedule in front of you. And if you do that, then I think they would have been probably quietly been happy to be 1-2 just based on the schedule, and 2-0, you're playing with house money.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's unbelievable. So go on. Sorry to interrupt you. We'll learn this week.
Yeah. I was, starting on Friday, I was surprised to see how much Kansas City struggled. And it wasn't just offensively. I mean, I know they lost Worthy, but their defense was getting no pressure on the Chargers. And, the Chargers were playing with a backup right tackle because Joe Alt had to get moved over to left after they Slater got later. Yeah. So I think And the fact that we got to watch 6 more national games of Kansas City is something I'm not looking forward to, because that offense is, again, Mahomes is great, but it's painful to watch. I mean, it is not good football. And I was really surprised by how little they were getting running the ball. I mean, Pacheco I mean, that injury he had a couple years ago still doesn't look like he's back from it. So I'm not looking forward to 6 more games of Kansas City on national television, since they had 7. Russell Wilson looks cooked to me. And everybody's talking about Dart, and I kind of jokingly said Jameis Winston gives you the better chance to win. I think he does in the short term. I know he's high variance, but Russell Wilson just, to me, looks like a guy that you put out there if you have a completely dominant defense. Their defense is good. It's not that good. And I think you're going to need, if you could get them in a situation where you can get up early, and Winston gives you that. I understand it comes to the good, the bad come with him, but he will put points on the board, and that gives them the opportunity to get their best unit on the field doing what they do best, which is rushing the passer. The Ravens game was, I know the Ravens blew the game, but it took a hell of a lot of luck for them the Bills to pull that off. I mean, the pass that
the tip ball,
Josh Allen. I mean, I understand it happens, and it's, and the Ravens, I think, are the first team in 270. There were the last teams that were scored 40 points and rushed for 235 were 277-0. So I still think the Ravens are problematic, but at some point you got to think they're in the back of their mind. They're worried about, hey, are we just, cursed, because they seem to blow a lot of games. And I'm trying to think what the Cam Ward, he looked shell-shocked, I thought, in that game. And Denver is, I mean, that you talk about like one of the worst places you could play for an opening game against that defense. But I thought that he took a couple of bad sacks because I think he thought he could get away from guys like you do in college. That doesn't work in the NFL. I mean, these guys need to learn that quickly. And he's got a matchup against the Rams this week that is not like he's getting the JV version, because the Rams defense and their defensive front is as good as any. So I think he's going to struggle again. But I think he's the right guy there. I would feel more confident in him than a lot of other quarterback situations. And I think those are sort of the key points that like I said, not everything's print for radio or radio friendly. So,
I love it. I hear where you're coming from. A footnote to the Cam Ward thing I would want to add is Denver played unbelievably horribly.
Oh, yeah.
Which is even more troubling towards the Tennessee argument and the Tennessee line of logic that they're making a turn. You're never going to get a Denver team, a Sean Payton team, that's coughs the ball up 5 times, where you're Tennessee on the road and you're +4 in takeaway giveaway, and you still lose by 8. Okay, so that's a gift from God that you got, Tennessee, and you still didn't know what to do with it. And I'm always, as the people know that watch this, I will always make a line of logic for the dog in the game. I think it's criminal to lay points almost. I mean, I'll even go that far. I mean, we'll get to our picks shortly, but this team, Tennessee, is a liability, because that's really a gift what they got in Denver. That was a flat Denver. They couldn't have played worse. Knicks couldn't have played worse. So the list goes on and on of who couldn't play worse. And they still got out of there with an 8-point victory. And I don't look at it like Tennessee's any kind of Denver's any kind of great force of nature. I looked at it more like Tennessee is really, really bad.
Yeah, Callahan may be in over his head. And, Sean Payton gifted them. And I cannot stand Sean Payton. I think he's sort of kisses up to the media and they protect him. And I think he's just a unlikable guy, but he's a good coach. But he gave him a gift at the end of the first half when he kicked the ball and didn't put it through the end zone. It's Denver. Your kicker can certainly put it through the end zone. And they got a free 3-point at the end of that game. So
No, they went to the break 10-9.
that game, the Denver should have covered that game going away, and they still managed not to cover at 8.5. That's the problem with 8.5. But yeah, no, Callahan may be the problem, but like I said, I really don't think you'll see him develop until he starts playing a couple of weaker defenses, and that's a hell of an environment to be put in, I think.
Yeah. All right.
But you're right. They gave it away.
Yeah. I want to go over what occurred last week. I've got my notes here, Mike. I want to go over again. If we were porn, I think we'd be like taken to the streets. We'd be like my favorite genre of porn. Close your eyes, mom and dad. Gonzo porn. So everybody act like they don't. Yeah, I never heard of it. Max Hardcore, Seymour Butts, all that stuff. I think that's who we'd be. Yeah, never heard of it. But the reason I say that is that we are explicit in what we're about to talk about here, which is, ESPN puts up the lines on the bottom of the screen and everybody makes their picks, and then you never hear from them again. There's no paper trail. There's no anything. So one of my theses at the beginning of last week's program was how last year was the 1 in 1,000-year flood where the public won. Okay? Where the guy that wears a Josh Allen jersey and walks into a sports book and makes a parlay bet, they won. There was a special loan that had to be made from the shareholders to both DraftKings and FanDuel because it was so bad midseason. It was a bloodbath. And my thoughts were that the house is the house is the house, and they will come back with major revenge this season. Okay, I didn't realize it was going to be this bloody for the first couple weeks. I'm including college, but we won't talk about college, but trust me, it's been a bloodbath. But my math and the way I look at it is the house was 8-2 in substantially weighted games. Okay. So not where there was 54% on one side and 46 on the other. I'm going to go through these with you. Okay. Just so we can see what a typical day in the life for those that have been to Las Vegas in their lifetime and try to wonder why the streets are paved in gold and why the drinks are free and the steak is Wagyu, high end, and everything's comped, and it's just a happy life for everybody. Here come the numbers. I'm going to start actually with the two winners by the public. Okay? This is where the public actually had it right. It was only twice. That was the Chargers down in Sao Paulo, where they carried 62% of the money and won outright and covered, of course, against Kansas City. The second one was, believe it or not, the Raiders. So it's very public-ish to bet and to not know you're never betting a team 3 time zones over in the early slot. They did, and they hit. Okay? They actually, 84% of the money was on the Raiders. Here we go. Here's reality, folks. 61% of the money was on the Bengals. Loser. 71% of the money was on the Saints. Loser. 68% of the money was on the Giants. Loser. This one's going to hurt. 89% of the money was on Miami at Indy. Loser. 75% of the money was on the Falcons as a dog at home. Loser. 66% of the money was on the Ravens. Loser. And if you hadn't made enough billions or added enough zeros to what I just said, that's just all an appetizer for the pile driver that occurred last night in Chicago. 81% of the money was on the Bears. Okay? 81% of the money. Now, Mike, if that's not a bloodbath argument that I just gave you, then I really don't want to know what a bloodbath is. Did you know that it was that ugly?
I didn't, but you and I differ fundamentally on the point spread because I tend to think it doesn't matter as much as people think it does.
Well, how? Like I just gave you 8-2, where I realize that what you're saying is that you can give me you could make it 14-0. It doesn't matter. You just don't think the line comes into play. The results sure as hell do. The
results do, and that's what makes the NFL so exciting in my mind is that if you know who the winner is, you're going to win 90% of your bets. But knowing who the winner is in the NFL week to week is, trust me, every person who's ever has entered a survivor pool says, wait a minute, all I have to do is pick a winner 1 week. And then they're in week 3, they're like, wait a minute, this team lost? How is that possible? Because the NFL is the king of parity. I had this week, a line came in to play more on average than it ever did. 11 teams, if you knew who the winner was, 11 teams won. If you pick the winner and the points on 11 of 16 games, you would have won. However, 5 teams, if you knew the winner, the spread came into play. So I think it was like Cincinnati. I counted them.
Jets, Denver.
Yep, Jets, Denver. Who was the other 2? But 5.
Minnesota counts. Minnesota counts. The game was a pick 'em.
Yep. Well, I'm talking about the lines we were talking about on Tuesday because I kind of used those. But it normally is not that high. So that's why I think the NFL is so exciting. And
Dallas counts.
Dallas was the other one. And that one, we almost called it. I almost had the nerve to call Dallas to win it outright last week, but I couldn't. But yeah,
I made the case for Dallas last week with you.
The line was way too high.
Right.
But I'm going back as far as my picks go. I'm going back to trying to figure out the winner and looking at the line after, because that's the case in every game as to who's going to win. But of course, I'm saying that as a person that went 1-2 to a person that went 3-0.
This episode of Taking It to the Streets is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, the leader in used and refurbished medical equipment. Wrightwood specializes in ultrasound equipment, but can also be your vendor of choice when sourcing lower cost alternatives for your operating room suites, scanning the entire medical spectrum. From single physician offices to larger hospitals, Wrightwood is the lower cost solution for your everyday medical equipment needs, and all of Wrightwood's equipment comes with warranty. You can reach Wrightwood directly at www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That is with a W, WRIGHTWOOD medical, or 773-848-7100. Again, 773-848-7100. If it's used medical equipment, it's Wrightwood Medical.
With that said, I turn it over to you, Mike. Give me 3 games you like this week for purposes of taking it to the streets.
So I took the Eagles against the Chiefs. I think that for a couple of reasons, the Eagles are going to have a rest advantage, having played the day before. It's not much of a rest advantage, but you do have to factor in the fact that the Chiefs are flying back from Sao Paulo. They don't have Xavier Worthy. They're saying he's day to day, but that guy's way too little. He is not someone that they're going to be able to rely on. And I'm concerned about the Chiefs' ability to stop the run. The Chargers manhandle them. So I'm going to take a good offensive line every day against a team that's not getting what they should. And I don't like betting against Patrick Mahomes in the, at home with Andy Reid there to prepare, but I'm not sure that they can stop them. I think that I've got that at -1, but you told me I'm getting -0.5, so I'm going to take the half if you're giving it to me.
Well, right. We're going, folks, by DraftKings numbers right now. And right now is 6 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday. So that is the line.
So the next team I took
So repeat Mike, what is the line you're taking with Philly?
Eagles -0.5.
Okay.
The next game I took was the Broncos -2.5. Sort of the same logic about what we talked about. We saw the Broncos sort of play at their worst and still managed to pull off a win. We saw the Colts sort of defy expectations, but maybe against a team that's already quit on the season. And it's scary when a team quits on the season 1 game in, but everything you heard about the Dolphins in the offseason was nothing was good coming out of there. Mike McDaniel seems to be the captain of a sinking ship, and you've got a bunch of people like Tyreek Hill who aren't exactly what I'd call locker room guys, who can potentially, make this worse sooner rather than later. And it looked pretty bad. If you're losing by 30 to Daniel Jones, and you're not, like UNC doesn't lose by 30 to Daniel Jones, much less a professional team. So I've got the Broncos -2.5. The last one I took was going back to piling on the Titans. I took the Rams -5.5. I think the Rams offense is going to be better than what the Titans saw on Sunday against the Broncos. Between Nakua and what's 17's name? The wide receiver, can't remember his name. He used to be with Gators. Put me on the spot.
Adams,
Devontae Adams. I think they've got a 1-2 punch that I just don't see how the Titans can keep pace with the Rams. I think it's going to be a game, like you said, if you still almost blow a game, where you lose by 8 when you have a 4 turnover disadvantage, you're probably not a very good team. And I think they're not coached. I'm not convinced Callahan's the right guy. So I'm going to take the Rams and the points because I don't see them losing. And I'm trusting that the line isn't correct.
Okay. I can't get past what I believe, which is the house is going to roll this year. And I'm not getting off until they get off. So I want to start with my runner-up game of the 3. And this is the difference. It reminded me, I was thinking about it earlier. Remember that scene in the Blues Brothers? Right before they're about to sing Everybody Needs Somebody. And Elwood's out there in front of the crowd. And he's doing the whole thing. And John Candy's sitting in the stands with his Illinois police force, with his orange whip. And it gets to the you, me, them, us. Before they kick into Everybody Needs Somebody, I think that's where we're at here. Either you're them, which is, again, a guy that wears a jersey to a sports book and bets a $20 parlay, or you're us, which is line and number driven no matter what. So that's what brings me to my runner-up game. This is the game I would have loved to have had and tell you to bet, so just take this with a grain of salt. This is not one of the 3. But this is the one that I want if numbers weren't involved. Or if favorable number was involved. That's the Bears. I'd love to have them. If I was in Vegas with everybody, I'm going to the window with the Bears over Detroit. No one likes fading Detroit more than me. We saw what happened last week with Green Bay. I'm coming right back with them to fade them. But here's the problem. It's only 5.5. It has to be 6, a key number for me to be interested in taking that final step with the Bears. Do I love it? Yes. Will I take it? No. That's my preamble. That's just your appetizer, folks. Here we go with games that make my qualifications because they not only they're the right number. And I'm going to go with a game right now that makes me want to just throw up, but I have to take it, and that's Cleveland. And I'm sorry. I have to take Cleveland plus 11.5 over Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't have a defense. What the hell are they doing laying 11.5 points? After they come off of a very, very gut-wrenching loss. And what, Cleveland's not going to move the ball on them? I think they will. The other thing, that game opened up at places that I respect. We name names here. So, Bet Any Sports, Circa, Catalina, Heritage, Bet Online, Sports Betting, Sharp Books, places that don't shy away from syndicates' money, to be blunt. Okay? The places I just referenced. And it opened up 13, 12.5. And at a lot of those places I just mentioned, it's a 10.5 now. So the signal has already been made that the right side is Cleveland there. Okay? That's too many points for Cleveland. We get 11.5 because we're DraftKings. We're taking the square books numbers. So everybody and their brother is going to, at that DraftKings and FanDuel's, of course, going to be betting and making arguments, as insane as they are, for Baltimore. That's selection number one. And the difference is that I'm getting 11.5. I see a lot of 12.5s out there, actually. I actually contemplated it, but you know what? The difference between 11 and 12 is a key number, and neither are key numbers in NFL betting, is 2.7% for 11 versus 1.7% for 12. Folks, it's 11.5. It is what it is. It's not 3, 7, 10, 14 here. So selection number one is Cleveland plus 11.5 over Baltimore. Good luck, Baltimore, with this team that's going to come out there, run the ball. They're going to get their first downs. They're going to keep the clock rolling and enjoy trying to cover 11.5 with them. Selection number two is, again, this is just because of the generosity we're getting from DraftKings, the Jets plus 7 over Buffalo. Most places that are sharp are at 6.5. You're not getting 7. So that's full disclosure. But again, we're going with DraftKings number. That's fine. If it was 6.5, there's no way. If it's 7, all day. Me, you, us, them. Okay? Jets plus 7. The last one as well is one of those that it's just about the number. Arizona, minus 6.5, I'll take over Carolina. There's already a lot of those sharper books that I have mentioned that are giving the full 7. They're giving a legit 7, which is the key number, on Arizona. Arizona showed up, hand tied behind their back, looked horrible against New Orleans. This is the real Arizona we're going to get this week. This is the real one. And bad schedule for Carolina, open up 2 games in a row on the road. So Arizona minus 6.5 is my third one. So in conclusion for my card, Browns plus 11.5, Jets plus 7, Arizona minus 6.5. Mike, thoughts on the Brownies? Can they outright Baltimore?
I was surprised how well they played. Not well, I shouldn't be because it's the Bengals in the opening week. But I think the Bengals had 7 yards in the second half. And
the Sharps know that. The Sharps like that. And there's the narrative that defense shows up earlier in the season than offense, and that's Cleveland.
Absolutely. And I think that Flacco is serviceable, and especially in that system. So, 11.5 is, I looked at it, but I also am concerned about the Ravens being popped up, and needing to bounce back. But that is probably too much. The Jets getting 7, though, against Buffalo, I think that's a letdown spot for Buffalo. And Buffalo's defense is not as good as the Steelers. So, and the Jets and
Fields drew the ball.
yeah, and it's not like they didn't have the book on Fields, the Steelers.
Correct.
He looked. That was probably the best game I've seen him play as a pro. And they gave the Steelers everything they could handle.
Yeah. And where do you fall in Arizona? That was a bad spot for Carolina to open up base on the road.
Here, I mean, I've said for a while now, Bryce Young is a undersized quarterback with no elite skill. He's not particularly fast. He does not have a big arm. His elite skill supposedly is processing, which is great. But in today's NFL, you can't be, there's not time to develop the way that they used to, like with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. And I've also said last week, I'll say it again, I don't think that Canales is the wonderkind that they all think he is in Carolina. And you've got after they made that trade with the Bears, they put everything into Bryce Young, and they probably got the wrong quarterback because they thought this guy was going to be the better quarterback, and Stroud has proven time in and time out that he's the guy long-term that you'd want over Bryce Young, unfortunately. So I think Arizona, my only problem with Arizona is I just never trust Kyler Murray. But I think that Carolina's defense still is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, even with Derek Brown coming back. So I think Arizona can put up points on them. And funny, Carolina and the Bucs are, I think, the only two teams that start on the road 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
So that's not a good spot to be in.
Thoughts on the Bears at Detroit? I mean, can the Bears keep that thing within 6 points and really get in Detroit's brain in the fourth quarter, or is that a blowout?
I did not like what I saw in Detroit. I mean, but that game was closer. This is me trying to defend my pick, but they were 1-4 in the red zone. But one of the things that I noticed is they did not use motion anywhere near as much as they had last year under Ben Johnson. And they seem predictable. Missing Ragnowski, or I never remember his name. I always think of Ragnar, which is a book I read. But they got pushed around. I don't think that Chicago's defense is as good as Green Bay's, but at 7, is it 7 or 6.5?
No, it's
6.5. You're waiting for it to go to.
Yes.
Yeah. If it's, to me, that's a game they can definitely win. And, I worry about what we saw last week, but I think it's going to be one of two outcomes. It's going to be a close game, or Detroit's going to blow them out. But I don't think, I did not like what I saw with Detroit last week. I mean, they just looked, Jared Goff looked like the last year in Los Angeles Jared Goff. And that's not who he needs. A dominant offensive line, and it needs to be schemed up perfectly. And he's played with 2 coaches who understood how to do that. And I'm not sure that John Morton, their new OC, who's never called plays before, is necessarily the guy to get that out of him.
Mike, there's something about this Detroit team that bothers me under Campbell. And that team has 0 pedigree as a team, which I'm big on. You're talking about a team that's never been to the Super Bowl. Okay, that puts them in a group with the Browns, the Jaguars, and the Texans. And the Texans and the Jags cannot be included because they have been around a quarter of a time as Detroit has been around. So their pedigree is awful. I still can't get over them losing in Washington the way they did last year at home in the playoffs. I thought that screamed how bad their pedigree is. And, I don't know what the stats are. I don't have them in front of me, but I know an 0-2 start is really, really bad for playoff likelihood. There's something. It's probably
I think it's like the 90. I think only the Chargers are one of the only teams.
And it's weird to think about them going out 0-2, but this Bears team they're catching them at a really bad time off that loss last night. It still is a divisional rivalry game. Game reminds me a little bit of what we saw with Dallas and Philly. And I think the Bears are going to be live in that spot. I really do.
You're just trying to go 7-0.
What that?
You're just trying to go 7-0.
No, I don't get I get no credit or no anything for the Bears. I'm just throwing that out there. But Mike, a great podcast as always. We look forward to seeing you next week for what you learned, what you didn't learn, and
There's plenty I didn't learn. I can tell you that every week there's plenty that I did not learn because I make the same mistakes week in and week out. By now, is taking my own advice most of the time.
Exactly. Folks, we'll see you next week here on Taking It to the Streets.
Goodbye from St. Pete. And remember, folks, you're only as good as your last trade, so never too high, never too low, till we meet again.